Hi everyone, I have a couple of tables that I would like to share with you that are coming up on the Super Bowl. As you can see here, when you put in the terms Super Bowl, it comes up with two matches. The first match comes up in Leviticus 4, and then the second match comes up in Samuel 6. But when you put more terms in, it actually brings up more of the matrix. And so when I read the matrix, I'll read from one of the ones that has more terms, like this one over here. So I may start with this one and then do the other matrix after that and read the scripture. And then I have some more tables. I have all of these terms that come up. And so I'll go over the rest of the terms after I read the matrices, because like I've said before, where it comes up in the scripture is what's really telling. That's the most important thing. There's lots of terms that come up, but where it comes up in the scripture and how it matches with what's put in at the top is what's really amazing. Because regardless of whether anything happens during the Super Bowl, I believe, and this is the case with all of the tables that I've done, I believe that the matrix nevertheless represents what is being represented by the terms that you put in. And I'll go ahead and explain what I mean with this one over here. This is the one that's coming up in Leviticus 4. And what happened with this one, this is all about sin offering and atonement. As you can see here, I pulled up a summary of what Leviticus 4 is all about. And as you can see, it says this chapter is concerning the sin offering, which was probably intended to make atonement for a sin committed through ignorance, 1, by the priest, 2, by the whole congregation, or 3, by a ruler, or 4, by a private person. And so this is all about making atonement for sin. And I noticed over here, I noticed the terms pour out was coming up in the text, which made me think of the vial judgments. So I put in the word vial over here, and that came up. And then I realized that another word for vial is bowl. In most translations, the vials are referred to as bowls being poured out. And so what I realized is that the matrix that this is coming up in is actually a parallel to what's in the book of Revelation, as it explains here. If you go further down, over here it says, it is likewise alluded to in Revelation 9:13, where a voice is heard from the 4 horns of the golden altar. That is, an answer of peace is given to the prayers of the saints, which are acceptable and prevalent only by virtue of the blood of the sin offering put on the horns of that altar. And then it goes on to say, compare Revelation 8:3. When the offering is completed, it is said, atonement is made and the sin shall be forgiven. And you see over here in this table in Leviticus 4, it talks about the horns of the altar. And that's over here in verse 30. It says, upon the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and the blood thereof shall he pour out at the base of the altar. And like I said, this is a parallel to Revelation 8, where it says, "And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake." And then it's actually in Revelation 9 where it talks about the horns of the altar. And that's starting with verse 13, where it says, "And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay a third part of men." And so all this is a parallel of what's going on here in Leviticus 4. And like I said, I'll read the complete matrix after I go over some of these terms. But as you can see, there's terms like saint, which come up in ELS form in the text, as you can see here in the blue with the letters S, A, I, N, T. You see the terms pour out. You see blood coming up in the plain text. And then in this one, you see the word super coming up here in the red with the letters S, U, P, E, R. And then bowl comes up in the pink with the letters B, O, W, L. And you see the word last coming up here in the lavender. It's going right through the word super. You see the letters L, A, S, T. And in the movie, I believe it was the movie Oblivion, which was talking about Super Bowl 2017 and saying that was the last Super Bowl. So I thought that was interesting that the word last comes right through the word super and then bowls up here. And then I had put in the terms pit open. Over here you see in the lavender the letters P, I, T. And then in the blue you see the word open, the letters O, P, E, N. And of course that's what's being talked about in Revelation 9, is when the pit is opened. And I'll go ahead and read that since I didn't read the first part of Revelation 9 earlier. But it says, "And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days men shall seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shape of the locusts were like unto horses prepared for battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. And that's verse 9:11. And of course, February 5th, the date of the Super Bowl, is going to be the 9th day of the 11th month on the Hebrew calendar. And then it says, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. So this is the first woe that it's talking about. And then it goes on to talk about the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is what is also talked about in Leviticus 4, which is where the matrix is in this table. And then when you go to Revelation 16, it's where it talks about the vial judgments, and you see the word vial coming up here in the green with the letters V-I-A-L, and it almost looks like a vial being poured out, the way it comes out at an angle. And then in some translations it uses the word bowl rather than vial, so the bowls are poured out, and you see the word bowl coming up here at an angle, and it looks like it's being poured out as well. And then you see the terms pour out coming up in the plain text. And like I said, this is all about making atonement, and that's what's being depicted in Revelation 8 and 9 as well. It's a picture of the priest making atonement, which was a foreshadow of the judgments that are to come in the book of Revelation. Okay, like I said, I'll read this matrix in a minute. I actually may have to do it in the next video since I'm getting a little short on time. But I just wanted to go back to the first matrix that I mentioned, which was the one in Samuel 6, that I said I was going to go over this one first, but ended up going over the second one first. But the one in Leviticus 4 was actually the first match that came up. And then this was the second match that was coming up in Samuel 6. And this one is interesting as well once you read the matrix and you see what that's all about. But one thing that I just wanted to point out right now is that it's talking about the Ark of the Covenant in this table, as well as some other things which I'll get into in the next part, in part 2. But the Ark of the Covenant is mentioned in Revelation 11. And Revelation 11 is where it talks about the 2 witnesses. This is also talking about the restoration of the temple, which I'll explain how Samuel 6 is also talking about that as well. But it's also mentioning the Ark of the Covenant. And then in Revelation 11, it mentions the Ark of the Covenant over here in the last verse, in verse 19. But I'll go ahead and just read from verse 18, because this is apparently when the wrath begins. And it says over here, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. And so I thought that was interesting, because it's mentioning the Ark of the Covenant here in Revelation 11, which is about the temple and the restoration of the temple. And I believe that that's what this matrix is really talking about here as well in Samuel 6. I believe it's ultimately talking about the restoration of the temple, but I'll have to explain that in the next video since I'm about out of time. Thanks for watching.